once you get the bracelet to the length that you need, as I have here, then what I did was I took and I tied off my working thread with a couple of half-hitch knots and wove it through the beads a little bit and trimmed that thread. Now I left the tail in because we're actually going to be making a loop here, because on this other end we're going to be making our own little closure, toggle type closure. So I used what weaving thread I had left, and I worked on a strip of peyote stitch that was 4 beads wide, and then I did it long enough, about 8 or 9 rows, so that when I fold it over, it's going to zip up almost like a zipper. You're going to have a high, low, high, low. I'm going to lay it back out here so you can see the difference. This is the end I started with, and I have a low, a high, a low, a high. The end that I finished with has a high, low, a high, low. If you need help with peyote stitch, watch the first video of our technique series, which was on peyote stitch, and you'll understand how to do this. Now, I'm going to take the 2 ends and I'm going to fold them together as so. Now, my thread is coming out on this side here where my working thread's at. I'm going to take and I'm going to come to the first side, and I'm going to come right up through that very first bead next to it. Then I'm going to come back across to my one high here on the end and go through it. Right now you're doing what's called you're zipping up. Once I go through that one, then I'm going to come here to this other side and come to the high one sticking up here. And then I'm going to go back to the end and go through this last bead sticking up. You just did what is called zipping up. And then I'll take my needle and I'm going to weave back through those beads again so that I can keep it pulled good and tight. Got to keep the tail pulled out of there though. Here we go. Your main thing when you zip it up, you do not want to be able to tell where you started and where you finished it. That's the whole purpose of the zip up, so that it looks good and finished. Now, Carol suggests in the pattern that you use some 12 by 8 drilled flat lengthwise beads. And I'll show you the picture here. These are what Carol suggests that you use. Now, I have some bicones left over, so I'm going to actually use my bicones for this. And I'm going to come out of one of the top. If you hold it here on the top and look at it, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beads on the end. So I'm going to come out of one of the beads on the end. I'm going to pick up a bicone and 3 seed beads and let it drop down. I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to skip the 3 size 11s, I'm going to go down through the bicone and the top bead that I'm coming out of, and then I'm going to come right up through the very next bead on the outer edge here. And I'm going to do the same thing through these 5 beads. I'm going to pick up a bicone and 3 seed beads, let them drop down. I'm going to skip the 3 size 11 seed beads and go back down through the bicone and the size 8 seed bead I'm coming out of on the base. And I'm going to do all 5 beads here on the top side, then I'm going to stitch through, do all 5 beads here on the bottom side. Once you have your embellishments done on each side, then you're ready to attach it to the actual piece. So what I've done was I have come out of one of the beads near the center of my closure. I picked up 2 color B, which is my size 11, and 1 color A, which is my size 8. And I'm going to take the needle and I'm going to come down through this last row that I added here on the base. And I'm going to pull so that it goes into place. Now, once I do that, I'm going to take and I'm going to go through this whole outline of beads here. Meaning I'm going to come through all three. Actually, I'll come through 2 A's. Then I'm going to come back through the 2 A's here. And through the B, the C, and the B. Through the 2 A's. Through the B. And then back through that same A. I'm going to pick up 2 B's. And I'm going to take the needle. And you want to look at the clasp part and see exactly where I'm coming out here. Okay, so I'm coming out on the actual clasp. Ooh, glad I caught that. Got my thread caught there. That would not have been good. Get the whole clasp done on and there we go. Okay, so my thread is coming out of this bead right here on the closure. So I'm going to come to the bead right next to it, and I'm going to go wiggle in, and I'm going to go back to that very same bead that I was coming out of. So that when I pull, I have my closure attached now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through the little closure part, down through these beads again to reinforce it. Then I'm going to tie this side off. Then we'll do our loop for our other side. Now that I have my toggle end attached, I'm ready to make the loop for my toggle to go through. So I've got my needle threaded on the tail here of my fire line. And I'm going to be using my size 8 seed beads. And I'm going to pick up as many as it takes to comfortably go around my toggle. And I want to try and keep it an even number. I've got 2, 4, 6, 10, 12, 14, 16. I'm going to start out with 20 on there. And I think 20 might do it. I'm going to put on 22 just to be safe. And my thread is coming out at this exact moment right here out of this bottom color B. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come to this top B and I'm going to go down through the B, the C, and the B. Now before I go any further, I'm going to check and see if my closure will easily go through. And it will. And it's actually a little big. So I could probably take off and do the 20. So I'm going to take and back out. And I'm going to pull off my beads. And I'm going to come back through. I'm going to try it one more time, keeping it pulled good and tight. And yes, it will go through there good. Okay, so once it will go through, you can take and reinforce your loop by going back through it a couple of more times. trim your tail, or tie yourself a couple of good knots, trim your tails, and then you'll have your beautiful new bracelet. Now, the book, if you would like actual directions, you can purchase the book, Mastering Beadwork, by going to Carol's website, which is listed on the very beginning of this video, and you can purchase the book from Carol. This is a wonderful book. You will not be disappointed. Be sure to check back for next week's video, as I'm going to be teaching you how to make a snowflake out of the book. So I hope you have a wonderful and blessed day.